All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Bhavin Khatri, President of the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council. Welcome to the District 2 Candidate Forum hosted by the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council. This is the first time Hilltop District is hosting a candidate forum, and we apologize in advance if you don't meet your expectation. Format for tonight's forum will include a 3-minute opening statement, a series of 9 questions where a candidate will be allowed up to 2 minutes to answer each question. A candidate will also be allowed 1-minute rebuttal if the candidate chooses. We may take more questions from the audience if there's time. And then in the end, candidate will be allowed a 2-minute for a closing statement as well. The timer will be displayed on your screen, so I urge the candidate to pay attention to the timer and respect the time limit for each segment. Audiences are encouraged to type their question in chat or use the raise hand feature of the Zoom when we call for a question from audience if you have time in the end. I'll ask the question. I'll also paste the question in the chat as well. And we can get started. So I think without a further ado, let's go ahead and start the opening statement. Andrew, if you could go first, that'd be great.
Thank you, Bhavin, and thank you to the Hilltop Neighborhood Council for hosting this tonight. I'm Andrew Butt. I was born and raised in Richmond and educated in our public schools. I'm raising my family here in my hometown and running my local small business, an architecture and engineering firm specializing in environmentally responsible design and in preserving historic buildings here in Richmond. I've always been called to service, and my commitment to this community runs deep. As a Richmond Planning Commissioner, I fought for more affordable housing. On the Point Richmond Music Board, I helped secure funding for music programs in local schools and created a fun community event that's been going for 22 years. As president of the Point Richmond Business Association, I help local small businesses thrive. As board member and president of Early Childhood Mental Health Project to help provide at-risk youth with the prevention and intervention services they needed. As your council member, I will improve public safety by restoring police funding and the community policing model, prioritizing economic development by bringing back businesses to Richmond and revitalizing the downtown, aggressively tackling our housing and homelessness crisis, working to improve recreational opportunities for families and invest in our parks and promote environmental policies that make Richmond greener, healthier, and a more thriving place for all. If elected, I will restore public safety and rebuild trust. I will fight for economic development that benefits all of us. I will address the affordable housing and homelessness crisis. And I will fulfill Richmond's responsibility to creating a sustainable future. I will increase transparency and accountability in local government. And over the last 2 decades, I've either served on or advised on the board of nearly every major Richmond nonprofit. And through that service, I've made an impact on the lives of many people in Richmond. Through that, I've helped to create a better community. As a Richmond Planning Commissioner for 8 years, I fought to preserve affordable housing for Richmond families and pushed for a cleaner and safer Chevron refinery. On the advisory board of self-sustaining communities, I worked with low-income residents and community members to create wide-scale, environmentally sustainable local food production in distressed neighborhoods. As board president for Early Childhood Mental Health, I delivered critical prevention services to local at-risk youth and their families. On the Point Richmond Music Board, which I helped found 22 years ago and is still going strong, I helped secure critical funding for music programs in our local schools and created a successful and fun event that brought the community together. As president of the Point Richmond Business Association, I helped local small businesses thrive and introduced a number of new community building events to the area, including Picnic in the Point and the historic Point Richmond Fall Fest. On the Solar Richmond Board, I helped bring more solar energy to Richmond and green job skills and training to young people in Richmond. On the Pogo Park Board, I helped revitalize numerous parks in underserved Richmond communities. My endorsements include Tony Thurman, James Lee, president Richmond Chamber of Commerce, 3 former mayors, and the former city manager, Bill Lindsay. Thank you, and I hope you will elect me as your city council member for District 2.
Thank you, Andrew. Cesar, go ahead.
All right, good evening, Hilltop. Thank you for having me. Bob, and thank you for having this forum here today. My name is Cesar Zepeda, and I have been a resident of Hilltops since I purchased my home almost 20 years ago. I bought my home here at the Fairways. So I am your neighbor. Many of you who live in Country Club Vista or the surrounding communities here. Once I purchased my home, I became the HOA president, sort of because my community nearby wanted to, actually was looking to me because I was the only one that read the CCNRs. And I was 22 years old and I couldn't believe that I was the only one that had done it. And they were looking at me for leadership because we were having some issues in our community. From there, I started getting involved in our community some more and then founded the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council, working alongside other community leaders that might be on this call now, to create the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council to give Hilltop a voice, working hard with the city, holding the city accountable, meeting with every elected official, government person in the city of Richmond. Our former chief of police, Chief Magnus, one of the best quotes that I've ever had from him, said, Cesar put Hilltop on the map. And the reason that quote came about is because I was always calling the police. I was always calling the city to make sure that they were giving services to Hilltop. Because for the longest time, we had not been receiving services. No one ever looked at Richmond. It was in 2014 that for the first time, many of our elected officials ever came to Hilltop. And I asked them that question, when was the last time you've ever been to Hilltop to give us something? And it was at another candidate forum back then in 2014. And many of them had even said over 10 years. So how can you service a community that you've never been to, you don't understand? I understand this community. I walk these streets, I drive these streets, I understand the issues of our community because I was a former president of the neighborhood council and because I'm your neighbor. I am available to everyone. And one of the other things too, I'm your elected official already. If you live in Hilltop, I am your wastewater district president. So for the wastewater next to the fire station, I already have that knowledge. I have knowledge in making policy. I have knowledge in working together and working with individuals that we might not always agree, but it's for the betterment of our agency. And I will do the same thing for the city of Richmond. I recently received the endorsement of the East Bay Times. And on the quote there, it says, the city needs leaders who can reach calm compromise. I am that leader and I can bring opportunities to Hilltop and to all of Richmond. I hope that I can earn your vote this November. Thank you.
Thank you, both candidates. Now you'll have 2 minutes for each of these 9 questions. First question is, what skills and experience do you have that you believe would be beneficial to you as a council member? We'll start with Andrew first, and then we'll rotate the order for the second question.
Thank you, Bhavin. So I bring a lot to the table. I've spent the better part of my 48 years in Richmond, and through the time I've lived in Richmond, I've been quite involved. As mentioned, I founded and continue to run a nonprofit that provides really both fun community events, but also we raise money to give to the local school music program here at Washington Elementary. We've been involved with other school-related programs, one particular called Many Hands, which I was greatly involved in. So for the past 22 years, I've been the on the board and or president of Point Richmond Music. Another nonprofit that I've been involved with for a number of years is related to mental health, which is another really critical issue that we deal with here in Richmond. And that nonprofit I actually just resigned as president of. I've been president for the past 2 years, been on the board for about 8 years. We provide wraparound services, mental health services to families and young children in the most impoverished portions of Richmond. So community-wise, I've been involved for a long time. On the political side, I've obviously been, I've been proximate for a number of years, having a father who's been in politics for the past 20 plus years. But I myself have served for 8 years on the Richmond Planning Commission, where we made some very important and significant decisions, for example, on the Chevron modernization project, on housing, and a lot of critical issues. Prior to that, I'd served on the El Cerrito City Planning Commission, which I chaired. I lived there for 4 years briefly when I moved out of Richmond, bought my first house, and I served for 3 years on the Richmond Design Review Board. So I also run a business in Richmond. I employ about 20 people. Our business has been here since 1974, and I am the parent of 2 kids. So I'm proud to say I've gone to Richmond schools, and you know, I'm very involved on a lot of different levels.
Okay, Andrew, same question.
You mean to Cesar?
Oh, sorry. Yes, Cesar.
It's all right. The other day we have matching suits, so you can not tell us apart. All right. So some of my experience, again, president of my HOA. I've been president for about almost 20 years. I can't seem to get more board members in there. A founder of the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council, worked hard with our community to try to manage our $1 million budget for the special assessment. I was appointed by John Joya, our county supervisor, to the Contra Costa Economic Development Council several years ago. I'm a board member of GRIP, the only family shelter here in Richmond and in the West County. Board member of the Contra Costa College Foundation, president and founder of Richmond Rainbow Pride, Richmond's only LGBTQI organization. And again, I'm also an elected official. I'm an elected official and president of the board for the West County Wastewater District, already making policy, already working with various communities. We have a JPA that we manage. We're working interagencies, so we're working with the City of Pinole, City of San Pablo, City of El Cerrito, City of Richmond, and other government agencies. Working with other elected officials and other agencies is crucial. You have to have a partnership. In order to lift up Richmond, you have to know how to work with everyone, which is why I've been endorsed by every mayor of every city that surrounds Richmond, Pinole, El Cerrito, San Pablo, and other elected officials, because they know the work that I have done and that I continue doing, and that they know that I listen to the call from my community saying, step up and do more, and I am doing more because of my community. So that is the experience that I bring, and I can look forward to working together. I do health and benefits as my day job. And for that job, I bring knowledge that has to do with, for example, our OPEB liability, what is our funding, and how can we make sure that our budget is going to be safe and better for Richmond in the future.
Thank you, Cesar. Andrew, do you want to add anything? You have 1 minute if you choose to.
So first, I'd like a point of clarification. I'm pretty sure, while Cesar may technically be an elected official, I don't believe he was ever elected. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
You are.
okay. So Cesar, oh, I'm wrong.
Yeah, I was appointed and then I was elected.
Okay, got it. Okay, so yeah, that's what I wasn't sure if you had actually been elected. Anyway, in any case, so I too have support from a number of I think, you know, people who have really, I focused on discussion and support through people who I really respect and who have played a prominent role in Richmond over the past many decades. I also do have some support from surrounding communities. I'm supported by the former mayor of Pinole, Richard Mitchell, who was the Richmond planning director, but he also sat on the Hercules Planning Commission for a number of years. But, you know, people like Bill Lindsay, the former city manager, like Mayor Rosemary Corbin, Mayor Irma Anderson, all support me deeply. And I think it goes to show my deep Richmond roots and connections.
Okay, Cesar, would you like to?
Yeah, I'll just state a little bit more about where I grew up. So I grew up here in Richmond. I attended Richmond High School. I went to Helms, which is in San Pablo. I attended Richmond High School and then Contra Costa College. Andrew, can you share where you went to high school?
Sure, yeah, but I'll start with elementary school. So I went to, you talk about knowing different neighborhoods in Richmond. I attended 3 different elementary schools, all in very different parts of Richmond. So I started in Washington and Point Richmond. I went to Mira Vista up in the hills. I went to Woodrow Wilson, actually, in fact, with Doria Robinson, who's running for District 3. And so I got to know a lot of different parts of Richmond. I played baseball all over Richmond. I then went to Portola Junior High, where most Richmond people went at that time. Adams was closed and Labonte Dijon wasn't built yet, so that was the only option. And then because at Portola, I got to know a lot of kids that weren't in El Cerrito, I ended up going to El Cerrito High. I actually went to St. Mary's for a year. and El Cerrito High for 3 years, with a lot of Richmond kids.
Okay, we'll move on to question number 2, and we'll start with you, Cesar, this time. What do you foresee are the challenges of representing both the Point Richmond, Marina Bay area and the Hilltop area? What do you see are the greatest opportunities? What will you do to bring these communities closer together?
Great question, Bob. And so District 2 is not just those areas, right? We also are going to be representing Parkchester, North Richmond, Shield Reeds, and Santa Fe neighborhood councils. Some of the challenges are the needs. Each community has a different need. The needs in Point Richmond are different than Hilltop. The opportunities are also different. The opportunities in Parkchester, the North Richmond, and Shield Reeds are all very different. We got the one thing about this district is that we have neighborhood councils in every corner. So what I will do once elected is bring in every single neighborhood council, making sure that we're hearing their voices and making policy based on the needs of every neighborhood council. Hilltop should not have a greater voice than North Richmond or Shield Reeds, or Point Richmond should not have a greater voice than Parkchester or the Marina Bay, etc. Everyone should have an equal voice. Again, understanding that the needs are different. We also happen to have the majority of the big businesses. So being able to balance that out, the conversation between the big businesses and the needs that they're going to have to make sure they're bringing in that revenue to Richmond, but not to the detriment of the residents that live here, making sure we hold them accountable like Amazon, making sure that we have conversations with them so that they can give more money towards funding for all the potholes their cars make because of all the traffic down Atlas Road and all the smog they create driving up and down our communities. So again, having conversations with everyone because our needs are different. They're going to continue being different until we bridge that divide, until we bring everyone to the same table and we start listening to them. Even at Hilltop, people that live closer to the Country Club Vista, for example, are different needs than those that live closer to Highway 80, than those that live on Richmond Parkway. So again, listening to every part of the community and what our needs are going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Cesar. Andrew?
Yeah, so, Richmond is an interesting place, and I think it's one of the things that really makes it unique and wonderful is the fact that it's so diverse. And certainly the neighborhoods that represent and make up District 2, they're very different. They're very diverse. You guys left out another little neighborhood, but not to be left out is the Point San Pablo Harbor, which there's a few dozen residents over there. So one thing interesting about District 2 is that these areas, they're quite different from each other. There's a lot of certainly economic disparity and diversity between them. There's a lot of they're geographically isolated. So you take like the harbor is completely out on the peninsula, separated by nothing but a long road to the rest of the city. Parkchester is pretty isolated over there, with really one way or two ways in and 2 ways out. And then, the area around Hilltop is a much newer neighborhood, has a much more sort of suburban feel. And talking to people up there, I think they tend to feel a little more isolated from the rest of Richmond. Obviously, Point Richmond, which I know extremely well, having grew up here and worked here, it has a very rich history going back to the founding of the city of Richmond, before 1900. And then, as Cesar mentioned, you've got Santa Fe and Shields Reed that both really tie into a unique African-American history related to the shipyards. So I think there's a real opportunity. Obviously, some of these neighborhoods, really are suffering economically and I think need a leg up. So I think, there's an opportunity to kind of give them some attention that they haven't been given before. I think they have felt a long time that they've been disenfranchised. And I think there's an opportunity to bring these neighborhoods together and to help some of them, through things that other neighborhoods have dealt with. Like I've noticed that Parkchester seems to have a lot of issue with like cars parked on sidewalks, with crime. Some of the neighborhoods in Hilltop have cameras all over and seem to have successfully addressed that issue. So I think we can all learn from each other and thrive through that.
Thank you, Andrew. Or Cesar, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I have gone to every single neighborhood council meeting from all the different neighborhood councils that we represent. Hilltop, Parkchester, North Richmond, Shield Reed, Santa Fe, Point Richmond, Marina Bay, and neighborhood councils even outside of District 2. whoever's going to be representing us in District 2 also has to have a vision for the greater Richmond, because we have to be able to work together with other council members, and then understanding that whatever we do, in order to uplift District 2, we have to uplift the rest of the community. So Andrew, can you share a little bit, have you gone to any other neighborhood councils in the past prior to running?
Yeah, I've been to a number of neighborhood councils. In fact, going back many years, I've either had projects or nonprofit related activities in most of those neighborhoods. I know the people who have been involved in those neighborhoods for decades. You know, Vern Whitmore over in Santa Fe, DeJohna Burks, who started the North Richmond Blues Foundation, and Shields Reed, and the Dotson family, who actually, you know, the marsh is named after over in Parchester. So yeah, I know these people personally. I know them very well. And I have deep connections to the people who are most connected to these communities.
Okay, Andrew.
Thanks for asking.
Charles?
Yeah, I would just, you know, I would add that I think it is important to realize that some of these neighborhoods, you know, have really been completely disenfranchised and largely forgotten about and neglected for in some cases, you know, most of their existence. If you look at Parchester in particular, it's so isolated out there. You know, I was out there the other day knocking on doors, and you know, it's rather sad that most people have you know, fences around their yards. You can't even get to their door. There's dogs wandering around. There's cars, you know, junked cars and abandoned vehicles all over the place. There's people dumping trash, you know, right in front of houses, in front of the neighborhood. And I think the vast majority of people that live out there really don't like to deal with those issues. And I think they've almost given up on the city even, you know, being there to help them with these kinds of things. And I think what I really want to do is make sure these neighborhoods that have been underserved get the service they deserve and get heard and listened to and have their issues addressed.
Hey, thank you. Question number 3, and we'll start with you, Andrew. What should the council do to improve public safety and policing in the Hilltop District and the City of Richmond? What changes, if any, should be made to the city's approach to policing?
So some of the issues that I've heard people talk about in my forays into the Hilltop District are really, they're different than other issues in Richmond and other issues in District 2. And I'm hearing people talk about things like in the Hilltop golf course neighborhood area that, you know, that they've got a lot of issues with the UPS folks parking in their neighborhoods and speeding through their streets, and that they've, you know, said they've made many efforts to reach out to the city and no one ever pays any attention to them. Nothing ever gets done. And I've heard this from, you know, dozens of people walking these neighborhoods. So I think it's time that they get listened to. I think these are things that are relatively easy to address, you know, if we properly fund the police and staff them. You know, around the mall area, I know there's some major issues with people speeding around. You know, it's almost like a racetrack there. I almost got run over the other day, actually, someone just zooming by. So I think, you know, we need to look at some serious effective measures to calm traffic and to you know, to make sure that people are driving and interacting safely on the streets. I think so. More broadly, I think, you know, there's a lot of issues in District 2 alone. In the past week, you know, there's been a police action almost on a daily basis. You know, yesterday involving firearms. There was a whole like SWAT team here. You know, there was a carjacking the other day. So I think all of these can be addressed and need to be addressed by having a conversation with our police chief, which I've done, and figuring out what it is they need to effectively provide services and to effectively create a safe place in Richmond. And, you know, the basic answer is they need more staffing, they need more funding, they need more resources, and they need a city council who's going to be supportive of you know, of law enforcement and creating a place where we can hire good law enforcement.
Thank you, Andrew. Go ahead, Cesar.
So for police, right, I would work collaboratively with the residents in every corner here in District 2 to address neighborhood issues and improve the safety. Understanding public safety is not just police, but I would make sure that we have a fully staffed police force and also mental health providers, because they go hand in hand. You don't want to have a police come into a situation that a mental health provider could have resolved. Let's use them in other places that we need them more. I know that one of the issues is people call and can't get a police officer to come in and take a police report. Can we have somebody else do that? How can we improve public safety in general? Public safety also includes lighting, includes sidewalks, includes crosswalks. I know that on UPS, and by the way, that neighborhood that's there, that's Country Club Vista. So across from Country Club Vista is UPS. And in there, we have talked to the city about putting some speed bumps, and they delayed, and I kept saying, if you don't do it, something's gonna happen. And then it happened. There was a car that hit somebody, and that person ended up getting their legs amputated. So we have to make sure that we work with the city as much as we can, hold them accountable, bring them here, and have an elected official that will actually come here. None of the current elected officials ever come to Hilltop. They go and they get our votes, and then they go away. And that goes for everyone. For the longest time, more than 1/3 of the city has held all of the elected officials. For over 40 years, we've never had anybody at Hilltop. So public safety is important. We need to make sure, again, that we're fully staffing it. Right now, we're beat 8. We want to make sure that we have police officers coming about that are driving through all of our streets, from Hilltop to Parkchester, understanding the different needs and talking to the community. Let's get back to community policing and making sure that we're reducing crime in that way as well.
Thank you. Andrew, you have anything to add?
Yeah, so just a few thoughts. I think, first of all, mental health is important, and it needs to, it's an important piece of addressing the crime and the homelessness and the blight. And, again, having served on the oldest mental health nonprofit in Richmond, having been president of the board. In fact, I served with Chief French on there for a number of years. I know a lot about that. I think, but first and foremost, we need to make sure that we have an adequate police force that can address, the various needs of the citizenry. And I think at the same time, we need to figure out a way to be able to provide adequate mental health services. Secondly, I think, what I've learned through doing successfully community events for a number of years, over 20, is that it's also really important to have events that bring the community together. I feel like Hilltop, a lot of the people that I talk to up there really feel like they would like to see more of that kind of thing, events that bring the community together, where people can come out, get on the street, get to know your neighbors, and through that, you get a safer, more respectful neighborhood.
Thank you. Cesar?
Yeah, mental health has to be one of the biggest things we work for, and not just for the police, but also for our community, that they have access to it. A hospital is something that we need, so people have access to services. And in terms of services or community events, prior to COVID, we did have community events, and then everything kind of died down. Many of you might remember the Food Emporium. That was a community-made event that was actually traveling around Richmond to several other locations, trying to create that community, trying to bring people together. For a while there, it lived inside of the mall when the mall was still open a few years ago. But creating this community support, we also need the city to come in and support us. We need the police to come in and be visible to the community so you can establish that relationship. Sometimes we used to bring them into our neighborhood council meetings so that we can get reports, but it's great to have the police out and about in different community events.
Thank you. We'll move to question number 4, and we'll start with Cesar this time. What is your vision for the Hilltop Mall area? The area is currently zoned for mixed use, and there may be a need to change the zoning depending on what Prologis proposes at the site. What are your thoughts on rezoning, and how will you work with Prologis and community to realize the collective vision?
Great question, Bobbin. Right, my vision is mixed use. That's what we have there now. We don't want to have a big warehouse. We don't want to have additional traffic that doesn't belong to the community, that is just one big company making money coming in and out. Now we have to be able to balance it out, making sure that if Prologis doesn't leave, I have to really hear the community. What I would love to see there is entertainment, affordable housing, all types of housing, nice restaurants, great shopping, a grocery store, potentially a hospital, more park area, connecting the mall to the lake, connecting the mall to other communities around, making that walkable. when the Hilltop Mall was first created, it was created as a destination where you drive your car and you park it in this huge parking lot. We want to make it walkable. We want to make sure that the communities that are right next door to the mall, the most impacted, where you live, Bobbin, that they can come out to play and have fun and walk the streets of our new residential area without fear of Amazon cars driving back and forth. So having that talk, but staying steadfast to what the community is going to want. And I have heard time and time again, the community does not want another Amazon warehouse there. They don't want something huge that is not going to be appealing to the community. We want to uplift Richmond. We don't want to have another warehouse. We want to make sure that we have, maybe a Costco. That was a conversation, but other than that, making sure that it's mixed use and we stick to that. But we work together with the other sides of the mall circle to uplift those communities. And very importantly, working with the community. I will be working with the community, making sure that whatever the community wants, that is what we do in that site. We have this once in a lifetime opportunity to do a great project.
Thank you, Cesar. Go ahead, Andrew.
So I think the Hilltop Mall redevelopment and the surrounding area that the city is studying now, I think, it presents an incredible opportunity for not just the Hilltop area, but for the entire city of Richmond and really the entire region. I think, it's a very unique piece of land that's proximate to the freeways. There's great views from up there. It's ripe for opportunity. And I'd really like to see something fantastic there. And I think the city deserves it. I think the people that live up there deserve it. And as far as my vision, I could rattle off a lot of really nice things. I'm an architect, and that's kind of what I do is help people envision projects. But what I really want to see is a process that seeks out and listens to the community. I think there's a good start there. I think Prologis has shown that they're willing to sort of play along. They don't really have a choice. I think there's some big challenges, and I think the biggest challenge is ensuring that Prologis, who owns the land, is going to actually follow through with a project that's consistent with what the culmination of the community process is. And I think that's going to be challenging, frankly. I hope that can happen. I think if you look at Point Melody as a precedent, and you'll see that there was also a process that went about 25 years. That in the end, a group that wanted something different was able to successfully lobby the city and basically thwart that plan. And I think it would be a shame for something like that to happen here at Hilltop Mall. But as far as I think there would be a vision of something great there that would have stores, restaurants, retail, community friendly and family friendly events. Theater. Well, we have a theater already, but live music venues. Tie-ins to the Greenway and enhancements to the Lake Park across the street are all ideas that I think would be great there.
All right, thank you. Cesar, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, Malia put on the chat there about the design review board getting an earful. Your wife, Andrew, sits on the design review board. Maybe you can put a good ear there and making sure that she votes with the community and not on any conflicts of interest there, and making sure that we get heard from the ground up. So that's one big thing. We want to make sure that whoever we have in these different commissions, that they're going to be working with the community and not for any conflict and any conflicts of interest. And I would rather have Prologis get a little bit upset than have the community be upset. They have a lot of money and they can really do a great project that is going to satisfy the community and is going to create this project that is going to be the jewel of West County, not just Richmond. Whatever we do here is going to help uplift the rest of the city. So we really, really want to make sure that we have a great project and that we don't short sell our community.
Okay. Andrew?
Thank you. So, Yeah, I think it's less a matter of Prologis getting upset. I don't think they're going to get upset. That's not what developers do. You know, ultimately they're either gonna move forward with a project, or they're gonna walk away, or they're gonna you know, stall for a number of years, or they're gonna sell the site. That's what developers do when they're put in tough places. And you know, I really am hopeful that this process will culminate in a project that both Prologis feels like they can do, and it pencils out for them, and the community feels like, you know, it's going to be great and it's what they want. I think in the end, it's hopefully, if it works out, it's going to, you know, everyone's going to get a little something that they want, and not quite everything. And I think that's the way these processes work when they work well. As far as the design review board, you know, you may not know this, but they have very little over the say of a project like this. It's really the planning commission who's going to have the biggest say, hopefully listening to the community, and ultimately it's going to be the city council, because big complex projects always get appealed to the council.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to question number 5. What is your stance on Measure U? Hilltop District has many businesses, and some have threatened to leave due to Measure U. What are you going to do to attract new businesses in the Hilltop District and the City of Richmond? I think we're going to start with, is it Cesar? Yes, or Andrew? I forgot.
You tell us, Bobbin. I think you were going to Cesar now. I did the first one, and then you switched.
I think Andrew, it's you.
Keep us on our toes. Okay, yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So I am not a fan of Measure U, and fundamentally not because I believe that, you know, I do think that businesses need to pay, you know, whatever their fair share is determined to be. I think that the way Measure U was rolled out, you know, I think that the voters sort of got duped, frankly, into voting for it. But that's water under the bridge right now. And, you know, we have a measure that has, you know, hiked a lot of people's taxes, you know, exceptionally. My business went up about 9,000%. I know that the auto dealerships on Hilltop have, you know, really been hit ridiculously hard, and they're seriously thinking about relocating, and I don't blame them. I think the fact that Measure U was conceived by primarily, as I understand it, by the you know, a subgroup of the SEIU labor union, and ultimately carried by
Mr. Sugarman's on there.
by the RPA City Council. You know, it was not well thought through, and I think it was kind of a big middle finger to businesses, the way that defunding the police was a big middle finger to law enforcement. I think that what I would do, you know, I think going back to the voters becomes challenging, but I think one thing we can do relatively easily, if we have a business friendly city council, is we can look at, you know, forming a blue ribbon committee where we can take a look at Measure U, and we can reassess it in a way that I think is more fair to business. I think we can have that conversation. It's a little too late, but it's not entirely too late to invite businesses to weigh in, and to, you know, to reformulate it in a way that would be more fair to businesses, and hopefully would entice them not only to stick around, but in fact to relocate to Richmond. You know, I think most businesses agree that they should pay a fair amount. I don't think Measure U is fair, and I think it's bad for businesses. I think it's going to scare businesses off.
Okay, Cesar.
So Measure U was passed by the voters about over 70% a couple of years ago, 2 years ago or so. So the only thing that the city council is able to do, we can't get rid of it. The only thing that we can do is making sure that it's equitable to all the businesses, and that we're focusing on the small businesses. Once Measure U passed, there was over 1,000 small businesses who actually got a decline or a decrease in their tax. So that helped some small businesses. Some larger businesses, like the car dealerships, ended up paying a little bit more, but we have to bring them to the table, making sure that they're not going to leave Richmond. I worked with the car dealerships for many, many years, helping them out, staying in Richmond when they weren't being hurt by anybody else. And so working with all the businesses, making sure they're not leaving, and bringing in new businesses, and making the tax more equitable. If you're making over $3 or $5 million and you used to pay $700, and now you're going to be asked to pay $14,000, when you haven't been doing your fair share in the past, we got to kind of bring it up. That's what Andrew's tax used to be, was $700. So we want to make sure that we have a more equitable across the board, and that we're focusing on that small mom and pop shop, the taqueria here next to the Starbucks, or any other small business all around Richmond, focusing on them and uplifting them, and then bringing in more additional businesses to the city of Richmond, and then spreading them around between all the other business corridors, not just Hilltop. We're going to have the most opportunity here because of the new development, but spreading them into 23rd Street, Point Richmond, all the other small little pockets of business communities around Richmond. And then talking to developers to come in and develop more, to give us those opportunities to be able to put in small businesses in their bottom floors, et cetera. So thank you.
Okay, Andrew?
Yeah, so I want to talk about a small business that tried to open in Richmond. This is a letter that was sent today to the city council, and part of it says this was a cannabis dispensary that was basically authorized to open and never was able to. Richmond Compassionate Care Collective. They were the first dispensary that were awarded a dispensary permit in 2011 with a unanimous vote from city council. At the RCC tried to find many code compliant properties, all while paying a quarterly permit fee of $380,000. The defendant dispensaries, Green Remedy, 7 Stars, Holistic Healing, and the owners, along with others who aided them, Lisa Hirshorn, Antoine Clord, and others in Richmond, illegally conspired to keep RCC out of Richmond dispensary cannabis market. Defendant Bill Kozel and Darren Parrell, Green Remedy Dispensary, attempted bribery of Richmond officials, purchased real property in order to block RCC, intimidated landlords, and many other legal actions. Now, my understanding is that Cesar took $20,000 cash to defend himself in a lawsuit in which he was named in this. That's not small business friendly. It's not the way you treat small businesses in Richmond. They're trying to come into Hilltop and pay taxes. Care to comment?
Cesar?
Yeah, so actually I did not take $20,000. I don't know where you got that from. I think that was some of the lies that your brother keeps putting out there. So what I did do, because the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council, when this dispensary tried to open up in Hilltop, the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council and the surrounding communities asked that they do not open. So actually I was the only, and so far the only president of a neighborhood council to get sued by standing up with the community. The community said, we don't want it. I had to speak on behalf of the community because I was president of the neighborhood council. And at the time, I also happened to be running for my first office for the city council back in 2014, 2016. So they took that opportunity to be able to sue me, one, because they were mad, and two, because they figured they don't want me in city council. So, but I never took $20,000 from them, never took anything from anyone. So your brother better get his facts right there.
All right, thank you. Question number 6, and we'll start with Cesar this time. How do you feel about transportation options currently available in Hilltop and District 2? What is your vision for what transportation should look like once the Hilltop Horizon Development Plan is complete? That is plan that is currently undertaken by City of Richmond.
Oh, great question, Bob. And transportation is very important. We want to make sure that we build affordable housing near transportation hubs, and Hilltop can be that transportation hub. Currently, right now, for public transit, we have buses, but we don't have enough services that can move people around. I've gotten complaints before that the buses don't always take people to closer to their homes. We can look at new ideas. We actually had a presentation given to a couple of individuals about these little hubs, these little cars that can move people from BART to all over the city. It's called Glideways. That was one of the companies that came in and did a presentation. Thinking outside the box for public transit, how do we use less road and move more people? How do we make sure that people are able to get to and from work utilizing, so if they live here at Hilltop, if they use a Glideways going all the way down to the ferry, and then from the ferry going over to San Francisco, or going to BART if they're trying to go somewhere else, linking everything, especially more buses. Buses are more needed, and we need more options for public transit, getting people out of cars and making our community more safer to walk and also be able to use bicycles. If people don't want to ride a car or any other public transit, they want to be able to use their own bicycle, make sure that we have safe bike lanes for them to be able to commute from Hilltop all the way down to the ferry, or all the way down to BART, or all the way to wherever that other destination might be. So public transit is very important to be able to connect our city to Hilltop and from Hilltop. So thank you.
Hey, Andrew?
Yeah, so I think there is a draft transportation plan for the city of Richmond that includes the Hilltop area, and there's some interesting information there that I would suggest people take a look at, because there's been a lot of thought put into it and a lot of professional expertise. But I think you know, there obviously Hilltop is located proximate, as I mentioned before, to the primary freeway serving the area. You know, I think there's been some discussion in the past. I think it would be sort of a long-term thing, and it would be expensive, obviously. But if BART gets connected through to the north, through to Hercules, obviously it could potentially run right near Hilltop. So that's something to think about, especially if that area really becomes a major hub that I think it will eventually become. And I think that's part of the planning that should take place. You know, as we're thinking about what Hilltop could and should be. I think connectivity to trails and bikes and alternate means of transportation. You know, currently there's a new means of usually electric transportation coming on board every day. So things like bay trails are becoming much more and more regional arteries for folks to commute. And I think it's going to be important to ensure that those arteries are wide enough and safe enough and well lit and can actually be a viable means of transportation. Currently, there's a major homeless encampment on the artery on the Bay Trail between Hilltop and the Point Richmond area at Hensley. And I think that certainly needs to be resolved. As a longtime member of the TRAC, which is the Trails for Richmond Action Committee, I've had a pretty strong role in both advocating for and helping design and helping bring in grant money to the tune of millions of dollars to build trails and maintain trails in Richmond. So I think that's really important. I think you know, we need to make sure that whatever transportation goes in there is absolutely state of the art, is sustainable, and plans for well into the future.
Thank you. Cesar, would you like to add anything?
You know, keeping an open mind about the future of transit. LVG was a former owner of the mall, right? They're the ones that presented Glideways as a really cool new experience. Richmond was not able to get on board, no pun intended, quick enough, or just didn't really show much interest in it. So other cities have taken it first, but that would really lead Richmond in the public transit arena. Connecting us to other cities. We could be the leader that we are. We're the largest city in West County. We should be leading with our public transit to and from different areas. BART has been talked about, but for many years, every time the conversation comes about, I think it's a great idea, but it's too expensive and BART doesn't have the money. And now with COVID, they definitely don't have the money. They're struggling. So we would have to figure out new ways to bring BART in, or look at less expensive ways like Glideways, to be able to move people around.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, so I think one really critical thing when we talk about transportation is to understand that there's a lot of grant money out there for transportation, both for planning and for implementation. And I'm talking about at the state level, at the federal level. And I can tell you again through experience with trail planning and advocacy with TRAC, is that, you know, there's a lot of relatively obtainable money out there to help fund this. And right now, Richmond is not in the best financial position. So I think we really need to look at leveraging grants to do that. I did find the website for the plan that I was talking about. It's called First Last Mile Transportation Strategies. And if you Google that, you'd find it on the City of Richmond's website. And basically it says, so you don't have time to read this. Yeah. So the city is studying ways to enhance mobility within the Richmond community and between the city and everyday destinations throughout the region. This study will identify what strategies can be deployed to improve access to transit and connectivity across all types of travel. So this is a plan that's active currently, and I encourage everyone to participate in that. And it will help address these issues and plan for them.
Okay, we'll start with you, Andrew. Question number 7. How do you plan to update District 2 residents of your progress And how do you plan to include residents in the decision-making process?
Well, most people who know me know that I'm pretty easy to reach. I can be reached on phone. I can be reached on email. I'm on social media, as many people know. Probably people get a chuckle out of that, perhaps. But I'm engaged. I'm responsive. I'm the kind of guy that will pick up the phone when you call me. I'm the kind of guy that will call you back. I'm the kind of person that will respond to emails. So I've got a business here in Point Richmond. I live here. I'm around here most of the time. I would be happy to sit and have coffee with anyone. I'd be happy to have a roundtable discussion. I'll be going to neighborhood councils. I will make myself available, and I'll have an office presumably at City Hall, which also could be available. I like to talk to people. I like to discuss issues. I like to get into the meat of things, and I think you'll find that I'm very willing to engage, even with people who are incredibly negative, like Mr. Sugarman, who's making comments on here. I'm a guy that's not going to shy away from an engagement, even if you don't like me, and you're going to sit there and yell at me. I've got thick skin. I can take it. I like to dig into details and issues and figure things out. I'll leave it at that. You can go to Cesar.
Right. Thank you. Cesar?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, right, the great thing about District 2 is that we have, in every corner, we have a neighborhood council. I have worked with neighborhood councils in the past. I used to be part of the Richmond Neighborhood Coordinating Council. So once elected, I want to be able to bring all the neighborhood councils to the table, have monthly meetings with them, but also attending their meetings, but having one meeting where all the neighborhood councils come together and share their information, share their concerns, share their questions, being able to work with them, and then go into every neighborhood council individually to just listen to the particular neighborhood's issues and concerns, because again, everyone's going to have something a little different than the others. But my goal is to bring everyone together. And also part of this group that I'm looking to create would also have people from outside of District 2. Because in order to lift up all of Richmond, we need input from people outside of District 2 to come in and kind of give us a view of what's going on in the rest of Richmond so that we can work together. We cannot uplift the lowest parts of our community if we're not working alongside everyone. And we happen to have a few in our district. We have two of the most well-off communities and some that need a little bit more help. So we want to make sure that we work with everyone, listening to their issues. I live here at Hilltop. Currently, my campaign office is right next to Starbucks. And most likely I'll try to have an office here and have coffee time in Point Richmond and have coffee time all around the different neighborhoods and also at City Council. But importantly, to be able to bring everybody together at least once a month, having all the neighborhood council leaderships and anybody else that wants to be part of that conversation to be part of that table and be able to give that input. So thank you.
Thank you. Andrew, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this issue of outreach and communication. I think it provides an interesting opportunity, kind of going back to one of your earlier questions about what opportunities there are with District 2. And I think there's a real opportunity to to get people together who might not otherwise get together. And so I could see something like having forums in Point Richmond or out at the harbor or at Hilltop. Or in Parkchester or Shields Reed, or Santa Fe, and invite everyone in District 2, or for that matter, everyone in the city, to come to these neighborhoods that they otherwise may not know much about, maybe wouldn't go to, and really get to know each other. And I think through that we can all really grow and get to appreciate one another and the differences that we have, but also realize that we have a lot in common, and mostly I think we all want to see the city thrive. We all want to see it succeed. We all want our families to grow up in areas that are safe and nice and clean.
All right, thank you. Cesar, would you like to add?
Yeah, we could also, outside of the neighborhood councils, also understanding the different HOAs. I know the majority of the HOA presidents or leadership, so working with them. The HOA at Hilltop Lake, for example, their issues are way different than Bobbins. Right? You're right above them. than my neighborhood, than my HOA. So working at the micro level with the different HOAs, also the HOAs within the apartment buildings. And then HOAs in Port Richmond and anywhere that may have them. Rochester doesn't have them because they're an older community, but then going into there with their neighborhood council. But wherever we do have these HOAs working at that micro level, hearing more from those particular issues and understanding them. Each HOA works a little bit different. They have different access. Some of them have private roads, some of them have public roads. So just understanding their needs and that way at that micro HOA level, I think is also very important. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to question number 8. And I know this question is specific to Hilltop District, but this is the number one concern that the resident of the Hilltop District brings to me in regards to how things look in our district, despite having a special assessment. So the question is, Hilltop Landscape Maintenance District provides maintenance and servicing of landscaping in the Hilltop District. How will you make sure that the services and improvement funded by the assessment are provided to the property in the Hilltop District? Cesar, we're going to start with you.
All right. I have been working on this budget for a very long time. This is what sort of started creating the neighborhood council, working with the Country Club Vista HOA and other HOAs, looking at our tax. Yolanda Aquino, who is a CPA, her and I dug deep into this budget, trying to make sure that we were first understanding it and then that we were getting the services from the city. Once we started understanding some of it, we started asking the city for more information. The city kept pushing back. They did not want to give us this information. We went to City Hall, we went to the different city council members, and they all basically laughed because the Hilltop District budget was sort of their little pet project budget that they could move around however they wanted. And there was no oversight until we started getting more and more involved. And once we started asking those questions, they started backing off a little bit, but we're still having a hard time. So looking at that budget, bringing our people to question what we're already doing, the city manager, questioning whoever's in finance, the finance director, and then working with City Hall and City Council to pass a tax. Every year we keep getting a 3%, and I always question it, that the community doesn't push back enough to where we can push back on that 3%. And the city loves getting a 3% every single year. So I want to be able to activate our people. Once I sit at City Hall, I can better advocate. That was one of the whole reasons, again, why my community originally asked me to run for office back in 2016, is so that we can have more access for our community at City Hall. And again, looking at that budget, looking at it inside and out, making sure that we have all the services, all the people working up here, and that they're not using our money everywhere else in the city, which they currently are still doing. So, thank you.
Andrew?
Yeah, so I think, one area where Cesar and I certainly agree is that I think that the funds have not been well managed. And I don't think that Hilltop is getting its money worth for the amount of money they're putting in, which is substantial. But I think, I would ask Cesar, if you've been at this for so long, why has nothing changed? And I think, part of it, as I understand it, is that there really is no official body that has any purview over making these decisions. It basically is the city council, per the way that this is written and the way that state law exists. And so my understanding is that, there was some entity that never truly existed, that Cesar sort of had sole control over, that Bill Lindsay at the time kind of threw him a bone to say, okay, this board has decision-making authority over the way these funds are spent, but in fact, that board never existed, ever, doesn't exist now. And so there's nothing that dictates that there's a group of people specifically that are able to help guide these decisions. And I think that needs to happen. It needs to happen, sooner than later. And we talked about this the other day when you all met with the city folks. And what I would encourage doing, what I would push to do if elected, is create a landscaping and lighting district advisory committee, similar to the one that many cities have. In this case, Folsom has one, the purpose of which states, the purpose of the City of Folsom Landscaping and Lighting District Advisory Committee is to help establish lines of communication between city staff and elected appointed city bodies. The Citizens Committee may also make recommendations to the Landscaping and Lighting District Manager, Public Works Director, and the Neighborhood Services Director concerning the maintenance and associated costs to maintain and improve landscaping and lighting districts. So I think that formality really needs to be done. And until it is, it's easy for the city to say, hey, we'll listen to you, but you have no authority.
Thank you. Cesar, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, the only history you have of this is just the last meeting, one meeting you attended. I've been working on it for years. And one of the reasons we haven't been able to change it is because of city council. Your dad sits there. He wouldn't listen to us either. So if we can't get city council to help us, what we ended up doing, because we had no, and Bill Lindsay did not throw any bones. He was actually very mad. He did not like that we kept pushing. So we had to put in the Hilltop District Homeowners and Stakeholders Association, which also is the same as the neighborhood council, the same jurisdiction. And I created it that way so that we can have a voice. Because before, Bill Lindsay will let anybody be able to give any direction towards this money. He would come in and say, oh, the HOA on the other side wanted something and they did it. But there was never a place they can come to. So I agree, we need to make sure that we have more formalized. But that was our attempt, because we were not getting listened to at City Hall. We were not getting listened to with the mayor or anybody that sits there. So that was the biggest issue.
All right. Andrew, would you like to respond?
Sure. So, yeah, I think, it is important that the community be listened to, full stop. And I think, the way that needs to happen, again, is through formalizing a committee or commission that has oversight of that and can officially interact with the city. I think, as you, I think, know, the only formal authority right now is that the city council reviews the report every year. There's an opportunity for the voters in the district to rescind the district and basically, abolish it. And, obviously enough people like it that hasn't happened. So, I think we need to my rule is, if something's not working, then let's try something different. And clearly, whatever you've done for the past however many years, Cesar, 20, 10, whatever, isn't working. So I think that needs to change. I think the other thing is that, it's a real shame that Hilltop Lake Park, which is supposedly within the area that's supposed to be served by this and receiving money, doesn't get used. There's nothing there. It needs to be cleaned up and utilized more.
All right, thank you. We'll move to question number 9. So I know this is not the first debate you participated. You heard each other before. You heard each other today. So based on everything that you've heard from each other, why should the residents of the District 2 vote for you? And I'll start with Andrew. Sorry.
Okay. So I think my record speaks for itself. I may not live at Hilltop. I happen to live in Point Richmond, but I've been going up there for a very long time, longer than Cesar's been alive, in fact, because I used to go to the mall when I was a kid. So I've seen that area change a lot. I've seen it when it was thriving as a mall, and I've seen it basically, go into decrepit ruin, at least around the mall. I think that place needs life. I think the people that live there, need not only their basic needs met around safety, security, dealing with the homelessness issue, both in the lake park. The other day I was up there and there was a fire in the area between Hilltop Drive and the Zygo Optics Lab. And I called 911. Thankfully, the fire department came quickly. I'm endorsed by the fire department, by the way, and the police department, both of whom I strongly support. So I'm gonna see to it that things get done. As Cesar has mentioned continually, he's been up there for 20 years. He's apparently been incredibly involved in every aspect, and I don't know what he's got done. I mean, I go up there and I see, an empty mall. I see, a lot of money being spent in ways they're ineffective. I see the city not listening to the neighborhood up there. I hear neighbors telling me that they've had issues that they've talked about for a very long time, and they're not getting addressed. Now, if I'm the guy who's representing the neighborhood council up there, and I'm the guy who's advocating for my neighborhood, I'm going to make sure these people are listened to. I'm going to make sure their needs are getting met and that they get addressed. So obviously that's not happening because they all told me to a T that, people have been talking forever and no one's ever done anything. So I'm going to get stuff done. I'm going to get it done effectively. I'm going to bring my experience as a planning commissioner, as a business owner, as a parent, and as someone who's lived in Richmond the best part of my 48 years. And I'm going to make sure these people get listened to and get things done.
Okay, Cesar.
All right. Well, I am the candidate who has worked all over Richmond, not just one corner of Richmond. I have worked at Hilltop. I have worked on 23rd Street because I understand the community and I'm going to be working with everyone in the community. When it comes here to Hilltop, everyone knows that the bottleneck has always been City Council. And it's funny that Andrew mentions that we can't get things done, that I've been working for so long and haven't done anything. I have no vote at City Council. All that we can do is write emails, attend meetings, have more emails, and have more meetings. And if they don't want to put any effort up here, they don't. And that's what's been happening. We have not had any representation at Hilltop for almost 40 years from an elected official that sits at the Richmond City Council level. Most elected officials have lived in Point Richmond, the Marina Bay, and other areas of Richmond, except up here. So when we're not heard, it's because of that. Complaining and talking to them, we do that all the time. We do that now. But it should not take so many meetings to have somebody be able to say, hey, I am going to listen to you and work with you to fix these issues. And then not everything can be fixed from the neighborhood council level. Building this mall, it's not a neighborhood council level. This is city council leadership. They have to go out and be making sure they bring in the right developer to give us the right project for our community, having our input, but they're the ones that have to go do the most of the work, working alongside us. But they should not have us do all that work if we're not already the elected officials. Bob and others involved with the neighborhood council, all this should be able to do is one email, one phone call, or one meeting, and things should be done up here. And right now, it's not being done because we have no representation. Nobody really cares for Hilltop. Nobody cares unless it's a vote for them.
Thank you. Andrew, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so first I'd like to give a big shout out to my two biggest fans, Mr. Sugarman and Mr. Jack Scheinman, two people who don't live in Richmond, but have been calling me out at every opportunity. They're big Cesar supporters, apparently. My supporters live in Richmond. They care about Richmond issues. They vote in Richmond. As Cesar mentioned, most of his endorsements are from outside of Richmond, the surrounding mayors. Mine are all people in Richmond. They're people that have made significant positive changes in Richmond. I'm talking about past multi-term mayors. I'm talking about the city manager who was mostly acknowledged as the best city manager Richmond ever had. These are people who believe in me, who support me, and who are in my corner. And they're the people who I listen to and I'm going to rely on, when I need to discuss deep issues that affect Richmond. And I just, I feel like we really need to focus on Richmond here. Richmond has a lot of problems. We've got a lot of great things going. I think if we pull together and focus on the problems, we can do a lot of things together. And I encourage you to consider electing me to represent you.
Thank you. Cesar?
Yeah, to be able to run a city, to be able to work with the community, you got to start with empathy. And that's very important. You also have to be pragmatic and you got to be able to think outside the box. And also, most importantly, not to have any conflicts of interest. You will know that every vote that I make is because it's for the best interest of the community, not for the interest of my pocket. I have no businesses in Richmond, and that is correct. But that is also a good thing for us because I am not going to put my business in front of Richmond. I'm going to make sure that I put in the community in front of Richmond. Working with our other elected officials, that will bring money to Richmond. I've been endorsed by the State Controller Betty Yee and State Treasurer Fiona Ma. They're the money people. If there's going to be any money that comes to Richmond, they're going to help us get it. And working alongside other elected officials, and also those that used to be former electeds here in Richmond who've also endorsed me, that's the best team.
Well, thank you both. I think that's all the questions we have. We may have time to take a question or two from the audience if there is one. If there are any legitimate questions, that is. So we'll turn it over to audience, see if anybody would like to raise a hand in the chat feature to ask a question. And if not, then we will move to your closing statement, which you'll have 2 minutes for. All right, I don't see any hand raised or any question asked in chat, so we'll just go ahead and move on to closing statement. Cesar, we'll start with you.
Perfect. Well, Bobbin, thank you, everyone. Thank you for giving up your night today, coming out and being with us and learning more about who's going to be representing you for the next 4 years. So I hope to be able to earn your vote this November, knowing that I have worked for you for the past many years. We're helping to create the neighborhood council, helping to create community overall. I am the council member that will make sure that I listen to everyone and that I put you in front of any special interest, any conflicts of interest. I want to make sure that we restart that economic engine from the city of Richmond and that we bring everyone together to the table to be able to listen to everyone's perspectives. Hilltop is just not the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council. It encompasses a lot of other pieces of Richmond, including Parkchester. Let's bring everyone up here to make sure that we are doing the best project for the Hilltop District. As in terms of Point Mulati, that issue there is a done deal. I think that we need to focus the staff energy and efforts into this development at Hilltop. Remember, we have 6 districts, but overall, we're still one Richmond. With everyone having a particular point of view and wanting something different for Richmond, how do we bring people together that truly are going to listen? And again, empathy is the biggest driver of our conversation. Again, I'll leave you how I started here. East Bay Times endorsement says the city needs leaders who can reach calm compromise. Most likely, there will be a majority of one train of thought at the city council, and I am able to work with everyone. I don't have to agree with them 100%, but I know as I'm already an elected official creating policy for our city or for our agency, I know that I can work alongside everyone. So thank you, and I hope to earn your vote this November. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Well, I too would like to extend my gratitude to you, Bobbin, and to the Hilltop Neighborhood Council and to those who are participating and hanging on in this conversation, and to Cesar as well. I think, you know, it really comes down to I think what differentiates us, because frankly, Cesar and I both, you know, we both tend to have fairly business friendly platforms. I think we have a lot in common in many respects. I think what differentiates us is, you know, the biggest thing is, I think the support he's got and the backing from the same people who back the Richmond Progressive Alliance in this election. I think this is a huge election year, right? There's 4 seats up, the mayor and three council seats, and so there's the opportunity to really overturn the city council. I think that needs to happen. I think it's interesting that he brought up the endorsement from Dan Bornstein, because basically what he said was, you know, I was a smart guy who had a lot of good points, but I would be a bulldog, and I couldn't get along with the RPA majority council. Now, there's probably some truth to that. I want to see the RPA majority go away. I think they've done a horrible job for Richmond. I think they're leading us down a very dangerous path. I think they are not good at governing. They don't make smart, intelligent decisions. They don't listen to the voters. They don't listen to the businesses. That is going to end us in a really bad place. And I think we need to be really careful who we elect this election. I think if you elect Cesar, you're going to get a guy who's basically backed by all the same people backing the RPA. Yeah, he's going to get along with them. If you want 4 more years of the RPA-led majority and everything they've brought you, then elect Cesar. If you don't, and you want change, and you want someone who's going to bring new ideas, a lot of experience, a passion for Richmond, and the ability to get things done, then I suggest you elect me, and that you elect a mayor other than Eduardo Martinez. So that's my 2 cents. I hope to get your vote. I look forward to representing you, and I am Bulldog. I'm going to fight for Richmond. I fight for all of you.
Well, thank you both. We really appreciate your time, and thank you everyone for coming out here and listening to these candidates. This election is really, really important for our district. This is the first district-wide election for District 2. So again, thank you both for coming out here and sharing your thoughts, and good luck to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.